Right now, if you wanted to reach someone a mile away, your thumb already knows what to do. It reaches for a glowing rectangle, taps a name, and the distance just disappears. You don't think about it. It just happens. But for almost all of human history, that same need had a very different answer, and it traveled through open air as a sound. Your ancestors learned to throw a voice across miles, and your brain still files those sounds under one word: language. You just stopped noticing. So, here is the scale of the problem they faced. For roughly 300,000 years, there were no wires, no signals, not even a way to send a word faster than a person could walk it. And if your hunting party split across a ridge, or your camp needed to warn the next valley, the only tool you had was just the air itself. But the human voice, shouting flat out, dies after a few hundred meters. Past that, the wind just takes it. So people did something stranger. They learned to whistle their own language. In 2021, Julien Meyer, a bioacoustician at the French research center CNRS, documented more than 80 cultures that still do exactly this. Whole conversations, carried in whistles, across terrain that would take hours to cross on foot. And a skilled whistler can be understood up to 10 times farther than someone shouting. Hold that number for a second. 10 times a scream's reach, made from breath and lips. So, how does it actually work? When you whistle a word, you strip almost everything away. The consonants, the vowels, the texture of your voice are gone. What is left is just pitch and rhythm, the melody underneath the words. And it turns out that melody alone carries enough to understand a whole sentence if both people already speak the language. On the island of La Gomera, in the Canary Islands, shepherds whistle a form of Spanish called silbo gomero. The islanders were whistling across these ravines long before Spanish ever reached them. And when Spain arrived in the 1400s, they just started whistling that instead. A whistled phrase there can travel several kilometers, bending around cliffs a shout could never reach. It was never just for show. Whistled speech is used by people moving through places where shouting fails, shepherds on a cliffside, or hunters spread through a forest who need to say, "Go that way," or "The animal is over here," without losing each other in the trees. Now, Meyer also measured why it works. A skilled whistler hits around 120 decibels and packs that power into a narrow band, between 1 and 4 kilohertz. So that band sits above most of the noise the world makes, above wind, water, the rumble of a forest. 120 decibels is louder than the car horn you lean on in traffic. Except this horn forms words. It was never crude. It was just built for a world without wires. But whistling was only one solution. In the rainforests of Central Africa, people reached for a different instrument, the drum. In 1949, a missionary named John Carrington published a book on the talking drums of the Congo after years living among the Kale people. He had noticed something that unsettled him. Wherever he traveled, villages just knew he was coming, long before he arrived. There were no phones. There were just drums. Now, the Kale language is tonal, which means the pitch of a syllable changes its meaning, and the drums copied those pitches exactly. So, a pair of drums could just speak the language, one beat at a time. A single drummer could be heard 3 to 7 miles away. And when one drummer passed the message to the next, and that one to the next, a sentence could cross 100 miles in about an hour. A message could outrun the fastest person alive, hopping drum to drum, across a whole region. This was a working network, centuries before electricity. The runner it replaced needed a day and good legs. But the drums were not just tapping out some simple code either. In 2018, the linguists Frank Seifert and Julian Meyer studied a drummed language of the Bora people in the northwest Amazon, published in the journal Royal Society Open Science. They found the drummers were not spelling anything out at all. They were just reproducing the rhythm of their own speech, the timing between the vowels, beat for beat. So the drum was not standing in for words. It was speaking them, stripped down to pure pitch and pace. And here's the part nobody talks about. For a long time, people just assumed a whistle or a drum beat was just a clever code, a substitute for speech, processed by the brain the way it handles a bird call or a song. But in 2005, a team led by Manuel Carreras at the University of La Laguna put that assumption to the test. They slid fluent Silbo whistlers into an fMRI scanner and played them whistled sentences. Then, they did the same with Spanish speakers who didn't know the whistled form. Those results were published in the journal Nature. In the whistlers, the whistles lit up the same regions that handle spoken language, the left hemisphere areas built for words. But in the non-whistlers, those regions stayed quiet. Their brains heard only sound. They had nothing to grab onto. So, sit with that for a moment. The brain does not have a special module for whistling or for drumming. It just has a module for language, and it does not much care how that language arrives. Speech, sign, a whistle bent across a canyon, a drum beat through trees. If it carries the structure of words, the language centers wake up and start listening. The whistlers did not rewire anything. They just used the brain they already had. To the brain that knows the language, a whistle across a valley was never music. It was a voice. But none of this was even new. Long before La Gomera, or the Congo drums, your ancestors were already engineering sound to travel. One of the oldest known examples is almost absurdly simple: a flat slat of bone or wood, tied to a cord, and swung overhead in a circle. That is the entire machine. It is called a bullroarer, and when it spins, it makes a low, pulsing roar that carries across open country. Spin it faster, and the roar climbs higher. Archaeologists have found them all over the world, including a piece carved from reindeer antler at La Linde in the Dordogne region of France, dated to somewhere between 13 and 17,000 years ago. So people in the last ice age were already spinning sound into the wind, on purpose. Nothing about this is modern, and here's where it stops being history and starts being you. That narrow band the whistlers used, 1 to 4 kilohertz, the slice that cuts through wind and water and noise. Your ear is most sensitive exactly there. It is right where a baby's cry is hardest to ignore. The pitch a scream lands in. The sound engineers reach for when they build the alerts meant to find you instantly. The alarm that drags you out of sleep. The ringtone you hear 3 rooms away. The notification that turns your head before you even decide to. So, they are tuned to the same acoustic doorway your ancestors whistled through, because your hearing has not changed. This wasn't a signal. This was a sentence, and the part of you built to catch a voice across a valley never stopped listening. It just changed what it listens for. So, here's what your body still does about it. Every time a sound makes you reach toward your pocket, you are just running a program older than farming, older than writing, older than the wheel. You didn't lose the instinct to reach across distance. You just outsourced it. For 300,000 years, Reaching someone far away meant making a sound with your own body and trusting the air to carry it. A whistle, a roar, a drum that spoke your language, one beat at a time. And then you were handed a small machine that does all of it silently, and the air just went quiet. The whistle became a notification you swipe away. The roar that once crossed open country now lives in a battery, in your pocket, waiting to buzz. You carry them with you everywhere. You just stopped looking.